to Cargo Film Presents. I'm Dan.
I'm Dave.
At Cargo Film Presents, we talk about the latest in documentary films, and today we are going to be talking about Fireball, Visitors from Darker Worlds, which is a new documentary from Werner Herzog, a man who needs no introduction, along with his co-director Clive Oppenheimer.
Each one of these stones from darker worlds has its own story. And the bigger ones have changed entire landscapes. But they also have left a deep impact on cultures.
The film is currently on Apple Plus. This film continues what I like to call late Herzog period, where he seems to have kind of mellowed out a bit. There's a bit less existential dread, maybe, and more awe and admiration. So, what did you think about Herzog's Fireball?
Well, listen, am I correct in assuming that you're kind of like a Herzog expert? I haven't. Have you? Did you? No, not at all.
I mean, I've seen a lot of. I guess I would consider. I've seen a lot of his films. Maybe
right.
say a dozen to 15 films.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's dangerous to consider yourself a Herzog expert. I guess one, he doesn't like experts so much.
Right.
And two, he's made what, like 100 films or something? I don't know. I mean,
wow, that many?
He's made like 30 docs at least, I guess. 30.
Right. Well, he certainly is rolling them out in a higher frequency in the last 10 years or so. That's true. All right. Yeah, I don't know. For some reason, I had that impression that you were a Werner aficionado, but so I was going to let you do all the talking this episode here. But no, listen. He's morphed into this an anthropologist. He's always been the adventurer. He's got a singular personality, and he's like I think as you referenced at the top, he's a brand practically, right? And so I did like the film. Right from the get-go, the way he immerses you like immediately into the action of this story. It's kind of giddy up and let's get on with it. Doesn't waste any time with small talk, and you get right into the action, and it's got the kind of the usual ingredients in what has become, I suppose, is the late stage Herzog nonfiction, stage of his life with, his infectious commentary and the grandiose framing of the subject, and which has been effective and goes a long way in wanting you to learn more about the subject, and that he himself is so very excited about wanting to share with the viewer. And Oppenheimer does a nice job, on screen. Most of the time, Oppenheimer is on screen as your host, and talking to all manner of people who are telling you about meteors and space rock of all kinds, and remarkable info is shared. You do learn a few things. The one that stands out, of course, which some people know already, but is the massive meteor responsible for human life. At least that theory goes, right? The idea that the meteor that hit in the Yucatan Peninsula accelerated the demise of the dinosaur and created an opportunity for mammal life to thrive in its place. And that crater, is like 93 miles wide and 12 miles deep, which is incredible.
Yeah, which Herzog describes as where the crater is like what does he say? A godforsaken beach town that makes you want to cry.
That is classic. That's classic Herzog, right?
Classic Herzog, which, I suppose is one of the reasons that makes it different from your typical, nature or science doc. You do get his signature, kind of his commentary that teeters between the kind of ridiculous and philosophical, which is Herzog's thing, and which I think what people have grown to love. What I like about it, I mean, there's this idea that the ridiculous is one step from the sublime is one step from the ridiculous, and Herzog definitely is there.
He embraces that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also, what I enjoyed about the film is that I did read that some reviews were saying, well, it's a love letter to space rocks, and in a way it is, but it's also a love letter to scientists and the
Hmm.
way in which he finds, the most kind of eccentric and passionate and sort of weird, but deeply committed scientists. So he's
Hmm.
not just looking at like, let's just find some scientists, like let's find some real sort of seekers, people who just
Hmm.
love what they do so much. And we get to have these conversations with them, and the film does feel, in a way, like a series of conversations with very passionate science practitioners. I wouldn't even say
Correct.
scientists, although
Yeah.
most of them are.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've seen a few of his more recent docs, and I think we've observed that in his documentary filmmaking, that he likes to get his subjects as excited as he is about the topic that they're discussing in the film. And that does make many of his nonfiction work stand out. The material is elevated because he has everyone in the film tap into that excitement and the awe that he's discovering. And he doesn't seem to want to accept boring subject interviews who drone on. And
Right.
there are instances in this film. There's one that I'm thinking of where he interrupts a subject or two, and he's kind of summarizes what that subject is saying in his own words, what they're talking about, in order to liven up the proceedings, a little bit, and
Right. He
get
switches them
a
off.
yeah,
He
yeah,
switches
absolutely.
them off.
But I think it's also a good note for future documentary filmmakers to not accept talking head droning on, and if you can find a way to elevate it and make it a little bit more interesting, why not?
Yeah, I think he's always, he's always ahead of the curve there, in the sense that, he's not looking for just, um, these scientific dry accounts. I mean, he is, firmly planted himself as opposed to documentary journalism, and as someone who is, seeking, deeper levels of knowledge and truth in
Hmm.
his work. I mean, he considers himself a poet, I guess. And so, yeah, he's often himself, or getting Clive in this case, to sort of push some of these scientists with slightly more philosophical questions or deeper
Right.
questions about the meaning of human existence and our place in the cosmos, which is pretty interesting at times. He has that conversation with the I guess the Jesuit
Hmm.
scholar in the
Hmm. Hmm.
Vatican, and
Yeah. Yeah.
they're talking about the relationship between the spiritual and the scientific. And I think in our very modern technological society, this is often a problem for us, where like these things seem incompatible, the scientific and the spiritual. And,
Hmm.
there's a way in which I think for a lot of scientists, actually the scientific is a real source of the spiritual, because,
Sure.
they're dealing with the limits of human knowledge. There's so much we don't know, and there's so much complexity and subtlety, and
Hmm.
things that leave you just baffled about the natural world and and outer space, which is, that seems to be Herzog's bread and butter, those things that appear incompatible, but yet they are
Hmm.
sources of awe and wonder and the
Hmm.
sublime that he's after.
How might the church react if NASA detects a really threatening object hurtling towards us?
I'll be honest, we'll pray. What else can you do?
Yeah, well said, and I agree. Certainly it does show that those two, on paper, these two subjects that might not be compatible could very well be. And why not use science as a tool for, or a form of expression of one's spirituality? I mean, use whatever is available, to explore that expression. I don't know if you remarked on. I noticed it in this film, and I don't remember other films that he's done this with, where he kind of just lingers, the camera on the subject's faces for just way too long, where the subjects just stand still there patiently, waiting for the shooter to kind of move on, but and they're just smiling awkwardly. It makes me think of my dad's old Super 8 home movies, where he would shoot my grandparents in the south of Italy, and they would just stand there like statues, not knowing how to act and
Right.
what to do. And it looked excruciating for them, because it was just this camera on them, and they felt like they just had to you know, show themselves but without a clue as to what what to do next. So I just wonder whether you noticed that, and I get the impression that Werner wants us to kind of peer into the, the soul of these subjects or something like that. I don't know. It just strikes me as kind of odd and unusual, and it is a bit of a signature Herzog move because I've seen it in other films. What do you think that's about?
Yes, I did notice that, and I think it does go back to this idea of the ridiculous and the sublime,
Right.
that he's after. And yeah, I do think that in a way it's this technique of like we're supposed to imagine Werner kind of looking into their soul,
Right.
and peering into their eyes, and either he gets a sense of who they are, he's reassured by them or whatever it might be.
Right.
So yeah,
Just by staring intently.
the power of the gaze, the Werner's gaze on these
Uh,
scientists,
I
and
love it. It makes me
yeah,
laugh. I don't buy it necessarily as a concept, but I'm not bothered by it either.
and yeah, people are so like they're totally not ready for it, because I imagine you just like sit there or something like I'm gonna just do I don't even know what he might say, I'm doing a video portrait or something of you, but yeah,
Right.
it goes on
Right.
for way too long to the point where yeah, it drops. I guess in a way, it also drops the and makes you acknowledge the sort of artifice of like interviews.
Right.
You're like, oh, this is actually a real person. They're not just in their designated role as a scientist.
Right.
I'm a paleoseismologist or whatever it might be.
Right.
You're like, oh, this is actually a real person with real passions and real obsessions for
Right. I'm not
rocks in this
sure
case.
if you're extrapolating all of that just by looking at somebody squirming on camera, but hey, maybe it works, some of the time.
Right. Right.
There was one there's that one individual in the film, the John Larson, who's that amateur jazz pianist
Oh
from
yeah, yeah.
Norway. And I thought that was kind of cool the way he collects the tiniest of what they call micro meteorites on the roof of a building in Norway, and then takes them back to his colleague, that eccentric looking fellow who dresses, he dresses like he's been cast in a Wes Anderson film set
Right.
in like Texas. And they magnify these micrometeors and really show these beautiful, unique, gorgeous rock formations, and and I suppose prove that they are from outer space. And it's remarkable to think that these things are falling constantly on the Earth.
Yeah, those are stunning images. I mean, those are the kind of things, yeah, you like these just beautiful moments I think you find in some of Herzog's films where you're like, wow, he like finds these guys who are total obsessive collectors of cosmic dust and essentially themselves have created like a new field of science, and they're not,
Right.
they're not guys with PhDs or anything, and here they are just following, a kind of obsession, a hobby, and they've created a new field of science, and have um, yeah, magnified these rocks into these beautiful images. I did discover that they have a book, so I'm actually thinking of buying
Ah.
that book
Oh, cool.
as a holiday gift. Would be really cool as a
Yeah,
coffee table book for someone
absolutely.
or whatever. But
Yeah, you can stare at those images for a long time. They were quite beautiful. And besides, then you have a character who's dressed up to go to a costume party too, which is makes for a great
what does
documentary
he
subject.
say? He looks like Wyatt Earp or something.
Right, something like that.
And he survived cancer, 4 bouts of cancer.
Yeah. That last the sequence that struck me the most in the film, I did feel like this film didn't necessarily connect so well from section to section necessarily. It's kind of connected by it's Herzog stitching it together with his narration. But it's not like the sections that followed organically. But the sequence that really worked best was towards the end in the Korean expedition, because you found the perfect kind of Herzog subject, right? The Korean scientist who was just completely enthusiastic and awe-inspired, and you had this ecstatic music playing throughout that sequence, and this incredible remote location, miles of ice everywhere, as far as the eye can see. and it looked amazing, and Herzog's doing the narrating and his typical Herzogian fashion. Is that a term? Can we coin that term?
So, yeah, yeah.
Anyway, it just felt like this was like Herzog documentary heaven. That whole sequence. It had all the ingredients.
I agree. It's one of those sequences that's worth the price of admission. I think you're right that it does hang together better in some places and not so great in other places. And I mean, for me, I thought the previous film, the volcano film, was a stronger film. Like, it just felt like it was, it did work
Mm.
as a sort of deeper and maybe more beautiful film. I think that probably there was more sequences like that. Clive is a volcanologist, so it's sort of just held together better.
Yeah.
But that sequence of the Koreans discovering the meteorite on the ice, powerful stuff.
Meteorites have meaning. The task of humanity is to interpret what that meaning is.
When a loved one departs this life to the next, the transition is done through this time.
He calls it the ecstasy of discovery, or whatever. And that's what he's after, man. Like, I think he's filmmaking the same way, right? It's like about this ecstasy of discovery.
In fact, no, you're absolutely right. I read someplace that he equates, at a certain level, science with filmmaking, that they're similar, that in that you have this awe of discovery, and especially with documentary filmmaking, I think you're always searching for moments that are true and transcendent at a certain level. Now I'm starting to sound like Herzog. Anyway,
but
I like
not even his footage. It's not even his footage. Like, that's obviously was shot a few years before, 2014 or 2015. Right. But he also likes to use some found footage. I mean, the film opens with that sort of incredible sequence of the dashboard footage of Siberia, of meteorites coming across the sky, and then the film closes with this footage from the Korean. Not totally close the film, I guess.
No, but that's towards the end for sure. Yeah, it's very cool.
Yep. And then planetary defense. I didn't actually know about this program. Which I think, I guess, is worth maybe mentioning, that there is, humans have come up with a plan in case a huge meteorite does bear down on planet Earth. And so that was, I thought, a kind of interesting sequence as well, that it's not hopeless if
there are at least a couple of people manning the the dials.
That's awesome when job. What do you tell people, at a cocktail party, or I work in planetary defense.
Is that when he uses those sequences from the movie Deep Impact?
Yeah, also a great, Herzogian flourish.
Right. Which he seems to be a big fan of, because apparently he seems to think that they depict a potential meteorite hit very well in that film. So that might be your companion film along with this one.
That's right. Yeah, he probably maybe let down a lot of cinephiles there when he
right.
I mean, I don't know if he loved the film, but that sequence he thought was particularly
correct,
beautiful and poetic depiction of apocalyptic things.
Yeah.
So anything else you want to say about?
No, listen, it's you're getting if you're a fan of Herzog, you're gonna get a good dose of that, and I think it's something that you'll very much enjoy. And if you've not seen a Herzog documentary, it'll have the all the usual things you will expect to see in a Herzog film. What is your favorite Werner Herzog nonfiction film?
That's a hard
Do you
call.
have a favorite? Yeah, I suppose it's a hard call, but
I will come back to that. But first, I want to say I know Clive and Werner are looking for a third film, a trilogy, and I want to throw out earthquakes to them. I read a book recently on earthquakes. Having moved to Los Angeles, you want to be prepared as possible.
yep.
And also a fascinating, naturally occurring phenomenon that leads to apocalyptic scenarios. So
Yep.
and I learned that they're storms, actually, earthquakes. You think of earthquakes like singular events, but actually they're often come as storms in a series of earthquakes over a series of time. And earthquakes have changed, obviously, the trajectory of civilizations going back thousands and thousands of years. So that's my suggestion for
There's
them.
your elevator pitch. Have them give you a call.
Give me a call, Clive. But my favorite Herzog film, it's so hard. You go through phases of Herzog. I think, when I was younger, I loved Straussic, which was a really weird one.
I don't know that one.
Kind of like sort of weirdo guys. I think one guy's a pimp. The other guy is he seems like kind of dim. And they come to America thinking that it will be like the promised land, but it turns out to be like just as bad as the Germany that they've left, and it's quite sad. The film.
This is a nonfiction film.
No, that's a fiction film.
Oh, okay. No, okay. I was asking about nonfiction.
Nonfiction.
I see.
Yeah. I mean, Grizzly Man is hard to. That's always.
Yeah. Grizzly Man is certainly up there. That's true. And does he direct the one that is the behind the scenes of Aguirre, Wrath of God, there, about his relationship with Klaus Kinski?
My Best Fiend.
My Best Fiend.
I don't know if that's his or not.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it was shot by and put together by somebody else. But you want to get a good taste of Herzog, you got to watch that film. Klaus Kinski is a. Well, let's put it this way: Werner is a worthy opponent to Klaus Kinski. He rises to the occasion because it's once you get a dose of Klaus Kinski, you either rise to the occasion or you fall away very quickly. So
that's right. And then Fitzcarraldo too is a good one to watch with that, which is not a Herzog doc, but obviously shows the behind the scenes of not Fitzcarraldo. What's the film that is the documentary about Fitzcarraldo? And just shows, Herzog, pulling this massive boat over
right
mountain top, and
yes, I know the one you're speaking of.
The madness of Werner. Is on full display in that one too. But there's too many. You have to.
There are too many. As
there
are
like a
too
Herzog
many
film festival yet, or what?
There should be. I mean, as there should be a book of anecdotes about his antics. Right. I mean, he's eating his shoe on camera,
right?
Because he lost a bet, and apparently he also he walked from Munich to Paris because his friend was sick. He doesn't call it walking, by the way. He calls it traveling on foot.
That's right.
You know that.
Yeah.
And he also. Yeah, he was shot. He was shot on camera. That you can see that. It was on during a BBC interview. He rescued Joaquin Phoenix from a car crash in LA.
That's right.
You remember that one?
Yeah.
There are too many to count. The guy is he is a trip.
Really.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, take your trip then with Fireball. Take a trip on a meteorite. As in the film, some people believe it. Meteorites are what they are. They can transport you to the netherworld or transport you to other worlds. So
Why the hell not?
Why the hell not? All right, we'll see you next time.
See you next time.